Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War with your host Bang and Dang, fresh off of the Gettysburg battle as well as the Vicksburg siege just ended. And now we're headed into the Jackson expedition immediately following the surrender of Vicksburg. Right, same day, yeah. Damn, dude, why does this feel like Vicksburg was so long ago? I guess it was over a month ago that we did that episode.
Well, plus they have 15 million battles going on at the same time.
After the Vicksburg siege ended, Johnston of the Confederates, his relief force, called by him the Army of Relief, was at the Big Black River near Vicksburg. Grant was concerned about a possible attack by Johnston's force against his army and a Confederate attempt to retake Vicksburg. Before Johnston brought his army close to Vicksburg, at Grant's order, Sherman had already deployed the recently arrived 9th Corps under Major General John Parke and other assigned divisions in an exterior line to defend against an attack from outside Vicksburg by another Confederate force. July 4th, the date of the surrender, Grant then ordered Sherman to lead an expedition to clear Johnston's forces from the Vicksburg area and to recapture the state capitol and railroad center at Jackson. They said, we need Jackson, Mississippi back, baby. Which, if you guys recall, we had the Battle of Jackson, literally a couple months into the war, 1862.
Yeah, and everything's went downhill ever since Stonewall got moited. Friendly fire. Pretty sad stuff there. After learning the surrender of Pemberton's army on July 4th, 1863, that very same afternoon, Sherman ordered the units assigned for the expedition against Jackson to move to the Big Black River crossings. Sherman ordered the 15th Corps to march to Messenger's Ferry. He ordered the 13th Corps to march to the Big Black River Bridge, where a pontoon bridge also needed to be constructed. And he ordered the 9th Corps to move to Birdsong's Ferry. Sherman's force included the 9th Corps under Major General John G. Parke, with 16th Corps Division under Brigadier General William Soyboy.
Soyboy Smith.
William Soy Smith. He had them attached, and the division included a cavalry brigade commanded by Colonel Cyrus Bussey. I think it's Busy.
Right. Busy, maybe.
Gary Busey.
Maybe Busey, yeah.
Busey?
Sure.
Cyrus
Bussey, Busey, or Buzzy.
The 15th Corps, Sherman's own corps, under Major General Frederick Steele for this operation, and a division of the 17th Corps under the command of Brigadier General John MacArthur.
John MacArthur? Oh. Is he related to the other MacArthur?
Could be.
The most famous one?
Could be, but I doubt it.
Maybe.
So.
Don't know what you just said in any of that.
Looks like Sherman just plucked a bunch of people out.
July 5th, Johnston learned of the surrender of Vicksburg and its defenders and began to move east towards Jackson. Johnston's quote-unquote Army of Relief consisted of Major General John Breckinridge's division, Major General Samuel French's division, Division Artillery, Major General William Wing Loring's division, Major General William Henry Talbot Walker's division, you don't need that long of a name,
right,
and Brigadier General William Hicks Jackson's cavalry division. Although Johnston began to move back to Jackson on July 5th, he left detachments to guard some of the crossings of the Big Black River.
And so you guys don't know, this is the Confederates.
Right, obviously.
Right. Several companies of William McMillan's brigade of Brigadier General James Tuttle's 3rd Division of Major General Frederick Steele's 15th Corps crossed the river on July 5th in an effort to secure a bridgehead and were met by Confederate pickets.
Oh, pickets.
By late afternoon, Tuttle's men had secured the crest of a hill overlooking the river. They pushed the Confederates away and established a camp more than 3 miles ahead on Bridgeport Road. The remainder of Steele's division crossed the bridge without encountering any resistance.
All right, well, Brigadier General William Soy Smith's division of the 9th Corps was the first to approach Birdsong's Ferry in the early morning of July 5th. Confederate cavalry defenders under Brigadier General John Wilkins Whitfield were hidden in the underbrush across the river and brought the Union soldiers under small arms fire when they reached the river.
Uh-oh.
40th Illinois Infantry Regiment and the 103rd Illinois Infantry Regiment of Colonel Stephen G. Hicks's 2nd Brigade rushed to the riverbank to oppose Whitfield's cavalry. Other regiments tried to cross the river on foot but were stopped by high water and strong currents.
I bet they were. I think it's so easy to cross a river. This resulted in Parke's 9th Corps being prevented from crossing the river that very night. On the morning of the 6th of July, a Union patrol found and raised an old ferry boat, which they repaired. By mid-afternoon, some of Smith's men were able to cross the river and force Whitfield's troops to withdraw. It was midday on the 7th of July before the floating bridge necessary to allow Parke's men to cross was finished then. Soon it was partially collapsed, though.
Oh.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, what happens when you make a bridge in 5 hours? You might get a couple people across. Park sent his artillery to cross at Messenger's Ferry, and the men crossed the damaged bridge.
Hey, still got crossed it. The Confederate cavalry persistently skirmished with the lead Union units throughout the march to Jackson. Skirmishes were fought on July 6th at Edwards Station, Jones Ford, and Messenger's Ferry. July 7th, there was a skirmish at Queens Hill and encounters by cavalry of both armies at Baker's Creek on July 7th and Bolton's Depot on July 8th. While Sherman was making slow progress towards Jackson after a hard, dry, dusty march during the hot Mississippi summer. It's a song.
Right.
Johnston's forces reached Jackson on the evening of July 7th, 1863. A violent thunderstorm causing a torrential downpour helped alleviate conditions on the march for both armies, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
Right, like we needed this rain, boys.
All right. Confederate Captain William H. Edwards, he later wrote that civilians took buckets of water, well ropes. Confederate Captain William H. Edwards later wrote that civilians took buckets of the water well ropes along the route, and more than half the men gave out completely exhausted.
Oh, dirty asses. They took the buckets off the well ropes so they couldn't go to the well and get water.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, they took off the water well rope. Okay, the buckets of the... Okay. The defensive works at Jackson had been partially repaired after the Battle of Jackson on 14th of May and the return of Johnston 16 days later. Johnston was not satisfied with the condition of the entrenchments. He ordered the trenches to be strengthened and extended to anchor them on the Pearl River north and south of Jackson. He goes, these need to be bigger and longer. Cotton bales and artillery positions protected the improved line.
July 7th, the 13th Corps and 15th Corps Sherman's pursuing forces were at Bolton, Mississippi, fewer than 20 miles from Jackson. Sherman had not heard from Parke and decided to rest at Bolton on July 8th to give the 9th Corps time to catch up. A violent thunderstorm causing a torrential downpour helped alleviate, yes, we know. At 4 p.m. on July 8th, Sherman learned that the 9th Corps was on the way and ordered the 13th Corps and 15th Corps to resume the march. The 9th Corps came up behind the 15th Corps on the Bridgeport Road, but found themselves behind the 15th Corps because a presumed alternate road further north did not exist.
They just presume things, huh? Well, whatever. The 11th Corps caught up.
Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. The 9th Corps came up behind the 15th Corps, but found themselves behind the 15th Corps because of presumed ultimate. Of course, they came up behind them.
All right.
Anyways, okay.
Whatever, right? Oh, the 11th Corps caught up by moving across country over rolling hills.
They were all rolling up hills.
That must be fun. 8th of July, Union cavalry, several infantry units fought a large skirmish near Clinton. Major Fullerton was forced to deploy his troopers as skirmishers and use mountain howitzers to clear the way on Jackson Road. Busey's cavalry and several companies of infantry also had to fight Whitfield's men on the Bridgeport Road 3 miles west of town. Whitfield withdrew at dark unopposed.
Units of Sherman's army reached Clinton on July 9th, and a detachment of the 6th Missouri Cavalry Regiment skirmished with Confederates near Clinton. One last skirmish near Jackson was fought on July 9th between troops of William Suey Smith's division and troops manning Confederate outposts. Smith's men were well out ahead of the rest of Parke's 9th Corps, and Smith had the men rest for the night in a line of battle because he was concerned they might become isolated.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Yeah, and they were like, dude, I know they're firing at us, but we have to stay
chill,
right here.
Chill, bud. Don't worry, you'll be all right. Johnston had not stockpiled supplies, or did he repair the railroad bridge east of Jackson after the earlier battle. This meant that the Rebs would risk being trapped without sufficient supplies if they held out against an attacking force for any great length of time, and they could not remove stranded locomotives and railroad cars. Although Sherman limited marching to the morning and late afternoon and early morning.
So all day but night.
Right. His men suffered from heat, dust, shortage of water on the march to Jackson, where they arrived on the 10th of July, 1863.
The Confederates had poisoned wells and streams with dead animals as they progressed to Jackson, which forced the Union troops to haul drinking water from Big Back River.
Man, that's bullshit.
Well, that's not good. Got other people around there.
All right.
Historian Jim Woodrick noted that numerous accounts by soldiers of both sides complained about the extreme heat and parched conditions. Sherman moved his headquarters to Clinton on the evening of July 9th and began to plan for the approach to the city.
Well, it's almost like they're in Mississippi in the middle of summer.
Right.
I mean...
Gotta do what you gotta do, man.
I mean, come on. After personally...
That's why you should always stay near a river.
Right. After personally scouting the Confederates' defenses upon his arrival at Jackson on the 10th of July, Sherman ordered his corps commanders to spread out around them at about 1,500 yards from Confederate parapets. with skirmishers closer up and supports for them within 500 yards. Johnston had hoped to draw Sherman's forces into a costly frontal attack, but after Sherman had seen the improved Confederate fortifications at Jackson and encountered resistance in approaching the Confederate lines, he ordered setting up artillery positions and earthworks to besiege the city.
Oh, another siege? Well, Major General Francis P. Blair's division led the 15th Corps towards Jackson on the morning of July 10th. As the Union division closed in on the silent Confederate fortifications at about 9:30 a.m., a Confederate 32-pounder gun, then other artillery also opened fire on them.
They're waiting.
Right. Look, can you imagine that? Like, seen in a movie, they're just, like, approaching, it's
right.
silent, and then...
Man, it's like Vietnam.
Right. Sherman quickly went forward when he heard the artillery and began to deploy Steele's 15th Corps to both sides of the Jackson Road. To the south, the 13 Corps divisions of Peter J. Osterhaus, hey guy, and Andrew J. Smith moved towards the city along a connecting lane from the northeast and turned onto Robinson Road, thinking it was the Raymond Road, which was a mile farther down the lane.
Oh, jeez.
You guys got maps or what?
Right. Initial Confederate resistance from a small Confederate outpost on Lynch Creek and some men of French divisions was driven off by Fullerton's cavalry and infantry support from Osterhaus's division. The two Union divisions occupied a ridge east of Lynch Creek within 250 yards of the Confederate line. Oh, that's close. Fullerton's cavalry scouted to the right and found that the Raymond Road was a mile away and that there were Confederate troops at that very location. The Union soldiers already at the front dug rifle pits during the afternoon, while artillery of each side fired on each other.
Oh. The Union soldiers captured a cistern during the fight, which gave them a crucial source of water.
You ain't kidding.
When the 13 Corps divisions of William Benton, Alvin P. Hovey, and Jacob Lauman moved forward, A.J. Smith was still concerned about Confederate defenders further to the right of his position, and he asked the newly arrived divisions to move to that end of the Union line in that order from north to south. Okay. Hovey's and Lauman's division were placed last along the Terry Road and on Bailey Hill overlooking Lynch Creek east of the line of New Orleans, Jackson, and Great Northern Railroad entering the city from the south. Lauman's division was at the end of the line and further back from the Confederate line than the other Union divisions. Yeah, I'd say they got them pretty sieged.
Yeah. The earlier arriving division of William Smith waited for other 9 Corps divisions to catch up. By mid-afternoon, the 9th Corps began to move to the east, with W.S. Smith's force east of the Nolens, Jackson, and Great Northern Railroad line, heading north from Jackson. The divisions went into position after reaching the Canton Road, with Confederate cavalry harassing them as they moved forward. You ain't shit.
Look at that ass. Oh.
That part ain't even loaded. Brigadier Generals Thomas Welsh and Robert Potter, they placed their divisions west of the railroad with Welsh's troops on the Insane Asylum Ridge.
Okay. When the full Union deployment was completed, Union divisions occupied positions opposite Confederate divisions in a semicircular defensive line west of the town between branches of the Pearl River opposite Confederate divisions. Sherman deployed the 13 Corps under Ord on the Union right, which was on the south end of the line on both sides of the Raymond Road. Lawrence division was on the Confederate left opposite the 13 Corps position, and Sherman deployed his own 15 Corps under Steele to the middle of the Union line.
Oh, all right. Walker's division and French's divisions were opposite Steele's Corps in the middle of the Confederate defensive works. Scheumann deployed the 9th Corps under Park on the Union left to the north. Breckinridge's division was on the Confederate right across the Nolens, Jackson, and Great Northern Railroad, opposite of Park's 9th Corps.
Clearly.
Since Sherman did not want to make a frontal assault against strong resistance, which the Confederates wanted, on the night of July 10th, he issued orders for the Corps commanders to construct artillery positions and rifle pits as close as possible to the Confederate lines without taking needless casualties.
By the end of the day, July 11th, Sherman was satisfied about the construction of the protective earthworks and artillery positions, and he ordered a general bombardment of Confederate positions.
Uh-oh.
Sherman's forces brought only a small number of artillery rounds per gun on the march to Jackson, though. After starting the siege, he requested that the reserve ordnance train with additional artillery rounds be sent to his units as quickly as possible.
Quick.
Johnston learned that his artillery train was coming, and on July 14th, he sent cavalry under the command of William H. Jackson to intercept it.
You better, bud, because you know the Union artillery work.
Once they get more rounds, dude, you guys are screwed.
Yeah, Confederate can't handle the artillery, and like the Union couldn't handle the cavalry.
Right, well, Jeb lost his touch.
Yeah, the Confederate cavalry failed to stop the delivery, though, and Sherman's forces received the intelligence that the cavalry had been dispatched and acted to protect the wagon train.
Good for you guys. Look at this guy. Everything's falling in place for these guys now.
Scheumann ordered a brigade stationed at Champion Hill to escort the train and another brigade to move to Clinton to protect it.
Nice.
Right, when Jackson learned about the failed mission, he was even more convinced that he could not hold out under a siege and ordered his commanders to prepare to leave the city at once. What are we going to do? Prepare to leave the city. When? At once.
Needed to conserve ammo. On July 12th, the Union artillery launched a heavy bombardment of the Confederate defenses, but ceased firing in less than an hour. After the bombardment, Major General Ord told Brigadier General Hovey to move forward and entrench close to the Confederate fortifications. Hovey told Brigadier General Lauman at his right at the end of the Union line about the movement. Good job communicating like you should, guys. Yeah. Along with an instruction from Major General Ord the night before.
These guys are actually listening.
Right.
They're like, nah, there's only a couple people.
Right. Along with an instruction from Major General Ord the night before to make a reconnaissance on the Confederate line and, if necessary, attack the force in front while staying in connection with Hovey. Lauman mistook the information from Hovey as an order for an assault on the Confederate lines. Oh, never mind. There goes that. There goes that.
Just when we give you a little bit of compliments, guys, and you just take it away. Jeez. While Hovey stopped his division's advance at about 500 yards short of the Confederate line, Lauman had ordered his men to advance and attack. Colonel Isaac Pugh's brigade was leading the advance. Pugh was reluctant to cross a field in front of the Confederate positions because he's heard what happened at Gettysburg.
Right. And every time anybody's ever crossed a field in front of an army.
The Confederates were there positioned with Washington's artillery and Brigadier General Daniel Weisiger Adams' brigade. After Lauman came to examine the front at Pugh's request, he ordered Pugh to continue, even though Hovey's force had stopped to dig in. He was like, you can keep on going, bud. 80 yards from the Confederate line, Pugh's men were stopped by an abatis and Confederate fire. Cool. Survivors who could not escape began to surrender in the face of the murderous Confederate artillery and small arms fire. We've never said that sentence in this whole
murderous
show.
Confederate artillery? Right. Well, before the Union assault, Confederate soldiers had burned the Cooper House to give a clear field of fire in front of their fortifications. You know, besides the smoke and fire that's in front of that. At the family's request, the soldiers saved some items, including a piano.
Hey, can we get that piano?
Or how about you save my whole damn house, you piece of shit. Did they get reimbursed for this? Well, not from the Confederates.
No.
They took the piano onto the trenches, and some members of the Washington Artillery Battery played the piano and sang familiar songs before, during, and after Colonel Pugh's attack. Jeez. They're like, save it for us. Yeah, sure, we'll put it on the battlefield.
Right. Oh, no.
Sherman's troop took the piano after the Confederates left the city. 2023, the piano still can be seen at the Confederate Memorial Hall in New Orleans.
Oh, shit.
Nice. In the assault, the Union forces lost 68 killed, 302 wounded, and more than 200 prisoners, according to historian Michael Ballard, while William Shea and Terrence Winchell, as well as historian Jim Woodrick, state the Union force suffered 465 total casualties. Why do you guys compete with each other?
Right.
I mean, holy shit.
Stupid. Colonel Seth Earl, commander of the 53rd Illinois Infantry, he was moited. Colonel Aaron Brown of the 3rd Iowa Infantry was wounded. The Confederates had 7 casualties, only 2 killed and 5 wounded. Wow. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Maury was not the father. No. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Maury, in command of the 32nd Alabama Infantry, he was one of the Confederate casualties, having been wounded by a sharpshooter. And he wasn't very sharpshooter, but he wounded him.
Right.
When Ord, he went to Lawman's headquarters after being informed of the attack. He found Lawman disorientated and unable to put his division in order.
Oh, no.
Wow. Ord believed that, Ord said, Lauman, you're relieved of command. I'm going to place your division under Hovey's command. How about that?
He's like, thank you.
Right.
On July 12th, after the Union assault, the Army's continued exchange of artillery fire. Picket firing and small engagement by companies also continued. Okay. The largest such engagement was a reconnaissance in force by 6 Union regiments on July 15th, which established that the Confederates were still in position opposite Parke's Corps and resulted in Union casualties of 2 killed, 5 wounded. Sharpshooters also were active throughout the remainder of the siege.
Okay, the Confederate cavalry effort to find and attack the Union ammo train was thwarted by 2 infantry brigades that Sherman had sent to protect wagons, which we said earlier. Sherman ordered Colonel Alexander Chambers' brigade at Champion Hill to escort the wagon train after having received intelligence that Johnston was planning to send cavalry to intercept it. Sherman also ordered Brigadier General Charles Matthews to reinforce the garrison at Clinton to stop any Confederate cavalry progress. Only a small part of the Confederates' force was able to advance to spot the wagon train, and they decided not to attack the wagons because the Union escort of the train was very strong.
Right. Upon receipt of part of the supply of the ammunitions on July 14th, the Union shelling picked up. You damn right it did. Said business just picked up, boys.
Yeah.
When Johnston was told that the cavalry mission had failed on July 16th, he ordered the evacuation of the city that night at once. After the Confederates crossed the Pearl River Bridge, they burned it to hinder Union pursuit. The Union forces discovered the Confederate retreat only the next morning. Don't know how. Johnston did not halt the retreat until his forces reached Morton, Mississippi, 40 miles east of Jackson. They said, "You go and you don't look back."
Sodom and Gomorrah up in this motherfucker.
Right.
Sherman's forces made a weak attempt to pursue the Confederates, but intolerable heat and a lack of cavalry to keep in contact with the Confederates and to harass them ultimately caused Sherman to give up the pursuit. It's not worth it, guys. An expeditionary force from Steele's 15th Corps, commanded by Colonel Milo Smith and Colonel James Geddes, they did march toward Brandon, Mississippi on 18th July. They found many of Lawman's wounded men from the 12th of July attack at a Confederate hospital.
Then they burned that bitch down. No?
19th of July, the Union force engaged with the Confederate cavalry rear guard under Brigadier General George Cosby, immediately losing a man.
Immediately feeling tired.
Damn, what's going on?
What the hell was in my drink?
And the man was moited immediately.
And assaulted. After an exchange of artillery fire, Gettys's men moved toward the Confederate position through a large cornfield. As the Union soldiers got within small arms range, a torrential downpour ended that encounter.
Oh, shit.
The Confederates moved out of Brandon, and the Union force moved in for the night. The Union soldiers burned a quarter of the town and engaged in extensive pillaging. After tearing up the railroad and burning the depot on July 20th, the Union force gave up the pursuit and returned back to Jackson.
They love burned towns.
They do.
Wow. Determined to leave nothing of value for the Confederates after they withdrew from Jackson, Sherman's men destroyed commercial buildings, factories, warehouses, and any remaining railroad facilities around Jackson. Johnston's failure to repair the Pearl River Railroad Bridge left many railroad cars that could have been moved to the east through Jackson isolated at Grenada, Mississippi. And he subject them to destruction by Union cavalry.
Yep.
17th of July, Colonel Cyrus Busey's cavalry, reinforced by Colonel Charles Woods' artillery, entered Canton, Mississippi, and wrecked railroad yards, 5 locomotives, 30 railroad cars, 2 turntables. Damn, man. What did they ever do to them? A large lumber yard, and he also ruined the Dixie Works, which produced various types of conveyances for the Confederate government.
Damn, dude, they're just messing shit up.
Hurting them.
All right, by July 23rd, the comprehensive destruction caused by the Union troops led to Jackson's nickname as Chimneyville.
Oh, yeah.
A newspaper correspondent for the Memphis Appeal had been in Jackson during the siege and later reported that some fires had been started by Johnston's men before they left in order to destroy supplies. After an appeal by the mayor of Jackson before the Union forces departed for Vicksburg on July 23rd, Sherman left 200 barrels of flour and 100 barrels of salt pork for the few hundred civilians remaining at Jackson.
Oh, jeez. Thank you, bud.
All right, July 25th, Sherman's men had returned to Vicksburg, where they were able to rest for the remainder of the summer.
Oh,
Man, these dudes just took it off. Well, he's
Right.
he's about to launch all the way to the Mississippi or the Atlantic Ocean here soon. So
Confederate casualties during this siege were 71 moited, 504 wounded, 25 missing. Union casualties, 129 murdered, 762 wounded, 231 missing. The recapture of Jackson by the Union Army effectively ended the last potential Confederate threat to retake Vicksburg. Historian Michael Ballard wrote that Johnston's retreat was the last major action by a large Confederate force in Mississippi, and that most of his Army of Relief would be combined with the Army of Tennessee. With the capture of Port Hudson, Louisiana, at the conclusion of the siege of Port Hudson on 9th of July, 1863, the Union Army and Union Navy gained complete control of the Mississippi River.
yeah, because I remember them already taking control of the river.
Right.
So yeah, all right. Well, there's that. Vicksburg shall not be threatened ever again.
Nope.
Ever again.
Nope. Or Jackson, Mississippi.
Right.
Crazy stuff.
And that'll do it for us in this episode of Battles of the American Civil War. The Jackson Expedition thought this would be a little bit longer, so we didn't have any other battles prepared yet.
Yeah,
but
that's all right. Nice little 25-minute listen. You guys enjoy.
Next week we'll have the Battle of Williamsport, which is a couple sentences. The Battle of Boonesboro, which again is a couple sentences. The Battle of Cordon, which is
A good one.
pretty decent size, and I'm sure we'll probably end that with the Battle of Funkstown in Maryland. All right.
Funkstown.
And that's a couple of sentences. Yeah, so you'll have those 3, and Jeb Stewart's at it again over there in Maryland. So that's what we're looking forward to here We got some more action. It's the middle of the summer. Pretty much nothing going on. All the big battles are over. All the major armies are resting now.
For a minute.
For a minute here. Until we get to 1863. I guess Chickamauga. That's the big one.
You get 2 A battles down there in a row.
Yeah, but are they ever that good?
Oh.
Chickamauga we know is pretty good. The Battle of Lookout Mountain. The Battle of Missionary Ridge.
I think that's a good
Man,
one.
motherfuckers just banging on the ridge. That is a good one. All right, so we got a couple of decent little battles coming up. That's 1862. In the meantime, go check out Outlaws and Gunslingers on the Creative Control Network, where we are in the middle of covering the Mafia. This week's episode is covering
Nice guy.
Vito Genovese, who is obviously the namesake for the Genovese crime family. And we'll be covering the Genovese family for the next couple of weeks at least before we move into another family. And eventually all the families will be covered over there. So Outlaws and Gunslingers on the Creative Control Network. Also go check out our brand new show. Just debuted this week that you're listening to this past Monday. According to Wikipedia, where we take literally random Wikipedia articles and read them. Don't know what it's going to be about.
Never know.
This last one was about the genetic rescue.
What?
SS Vienna and Heron Island, three completely different things, and I've never heard of genetic rescue. It's just weird scientific shit. So
garbage.
We read them so you guys don't have to. Everybody's been down the old Wikipedia rabbit hole, so let us read them so you guys don't have to. Next week we'll cover Richard Child, Jennifer Bartlett, and artificial cranium deformation. So
all right,
bunch of stuff there. Richard Child was a first Earl Tilney in England between 1708 and 1733, so we're going way back. So,
okay.
Could be pretty interesting stuff.
Never know.
Never know. We'll see you next time on the Battles of the American Civil War. We are the Mother Michiganders with
Bang dang.